Hey folks, welcome to another workshop, Witty Wicklow Writers. I almost forgot the witty, so many witty stuff here. But yeah, I shouldn't forget this one. It's one of the most important, if not number one. So here we are with plenty of topics to discuss. We have three in mind that I'm going to share in advance that you guys can also think on your end and put your comments on the description that we can use that as material for our conversation. But this is a two-sides conversation. If you want to add another topic, make sure to use the chat box. Is there for that purpose? So we want to ensure this is dynamic. So if you are into writing topics, stay with us for the next 90 minutes. Myself, Jeroen, and Maria will make the most of it. If you know someone who's into the topic but they don't watch us as of now, make sure to share that they can watch not only this episode but also the previous, because they are stored in our database. And if you are satisfied with the level of content we deliver here, make sure to press the like button below. So before I pass the word to my comrades, I want to share our new sponsor. His name is Roy Berkowitz, and he's a designer. And he has fabulous T-shirts, hats, hoodies, you name it. So I'm going to show his newest collection. He's inspired on animals. So if you are into animals, I think you're going to be interested with his new design. So Roy is a very talented individual. So you can see that's his new collection, the animal collection. It's a limited edition, so make sure you order it as soon as possible. And there are all sorts. You have turtles, pandas, horses, giraffes, frogs, camels, jellyfishes, foxes. So if you fancy one of those T-shirts or hoodies, or there are also hats, if you dig into the catalog, make sure to use the discount code in the video description. Or if you can even order for a friend of yours, maybe for birthday or even for Christmas. You're already in July. Time flies, as we were discussing. So use the code below. I think the design is quite creative, and if you are a fan of one of those animals, I think you'll be happy to go around showing a horse, a giraffe, a frog, or anything like that. So that's my word of compliment for Roy. Let me pass the word to my good friends Maria and Jeroen. Just before we get into the topics, Maria, how are you doing?
Oh, all well. I've been sick for most of this summer, potentially with a plague. It's still debatable, but I'm all well. I've been publishing some short stories online, so creatively, I've been doing great.
That's good. Jeroen, what's the story?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. Just back from holidays, so you can't be in a bad place when you're back from holidays. Even if you go on holidays in Ireland, which I did. Yeah, no, all good. And the summer is flying by, and the year is flying by, and But yeah, no, all good. Very good.
Right. So before we jump into the topics, I want to show something I received today on the post. That's my newest book. It's actually not a new book. This is a translation. So my book that has been translated to Polish, it's here. It's a poetry book, and if I'm showing it correct, I'm not very good with this. So it's a poetry book, was originally written in Portuguese in 2016, and it was translated by Katarina Lavmel. It's now available for the Polish public, and I'm hoping to start promoting in Poland and also next to the Polish communities here in Ireland and possibly in the UK. So if someone is interested on it, there are two ways to order. One is Amazon, other one is directly with the publisher, and the name of the publisher, because they are based in the UK, although the publisher is Polish. The name of the publisher is Literary Waves. So just Google it, and hope you enjoy. And if you want to share your thoughts about the book, just send me an email. I'm more than happy to receive feedback, because that's how we develop ourselves. Yeah, let's get into it. We have the impact of the environment and the state of mind in our writing. How good or how bad is to drink or smoke while you are writing or creating, and cultural appropriation when it comes to writing. I'm having a hard time in picking the first, because they're all so appealing. So I did a sort of a draw. I try not to be biased, but we'll start with the impact of the state of mind and the environment on writing, which I think it's something that we cannot escape. But I would like to see if there is any mechanism, if there is any technique that you guys use, if you are aware of, or you just surrender to those two factors. I'll start with you, Maria.
I think the most important thing about it I've learned from Jeroen, actually, who's been trying to encourage me to write no matter what's happening in my life, no matter how busy I am, where I am. She says, always to me, find 10 minutes during the day, no matter what's going on, and dedicate those 12 minutes to writing, essentially, to the craft, as it were. And I think this is very good advice, because it's something that, I've experienced a lot myself the last few years. There's always something going on, and it's usually something bad. Like, it could be something health related. It could be, I don't know, family or friend drama, the job's not going great, all of that. And the problem with that is that we all tend to focus a lot on what's going on in our lives and in the, lives of the people around us. And then you tend to let go of stuff that are really important to you, like writing, other hobbies, taking care of yourself, even sleeping, all of that. So I'm trying myself to, create an atmosphere for me, if you will, where every day I will write, even if it is a sentence, because usually, as we say in Greece, you start with one small bite and then you want to eat more. So once you dedicate a little bit of time to something that you like, or that's something that makes you feel better, it sort of roller coasters into something bigger. And if you can exercise in that way of leaving everything behind, no matter what's happening, even on a global scale, actually, because that's another thing that's, crazy at the moment. So many things we hear in the news and everything, and it can really throw you off track. So I think if you just exercise this exactly, isolate from what's happening and create a little bubble for yourself where you can do something that you like, something that cleanses your mind, something that helps you focus on something different, escapism or whatever we call it. It is really good for your mental health as well. And then in hobbies, in I guess actions like writing, where at the end of the day you have something tangible to look back on, it makes even more sense to take some time for that. I just find some events happening inspiring. So it could be, I'm guessing, making something out of adversity, but there are some things that can really, really take you off track and make you forget what's important, whether that is writing or taking care of yourself, I guess. So yeah, environment plays a very, very important role, but it's something that can be manageable in most cases, at least, to a small degree.
Yeah, absolutely. There are certain things that we cannot escape. I mean, they are there, and whether you like it or not, they are going to be part of the scenery, and they will echo. They can be loud, they can be quiet, they can just be under the table, hidden, but doesn't matter. They are there. And I think what really is relevant for us as writers or creators is to be aware of what it is, and then decide whether we allow this to interfere or we try to reduce the impact. But the first step is to do a check of what's the environment like. Is it ideal? Is it something that can provoke some disturbance or not? So just matter of evaluating where we are and what can we make from it. Before I pass to Jeroen, I want to invite the audience also, if there are some writers or creators out there, they can share their thoughts on this. It would be great, because then we can also utilize that as material for our conversation. So please, the chat box is open. Make sure to put your views on this, because I'm very curious to see what is on the other end. So Jeroen.
Yeah, I would agree with Maria. I find that the environment is hugely important when you're writing. And the funny thing about environment is, actually, I have found, and just, literally in the last week, I've been on holidays, and I should be in a place where I can write. I mean, I have time, I have space, I don't have to think about anything else. I have, plenty of time. I was able to write once for about 5 minutes. It just wasn't, it was really weird. And I was really like, I should be. And then I was like, no, do you know what? If I feel it, I'm going to do it. But in that environment, I actually had the time, I had the space, I had plenty of, I had everything near me to do it. And I wasn't interested in doing it. And then I come back to my normal everyday. And I'm on the train home yesterday, and I was like, right, I need to write. And I had this feeling of, it's been a tough day, and there's a lot going on, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I have to write. And, again, it was strange, because in the environment that I normally write is the normal everyday, there's lots going on, there's busyness, there's all this kind of stuff. As Maria pointed out, there's political things in the world, there's things that are happening that are, impacting on me. But somehow then I can find the time and the space to write. But weirdly, when I switched off, and I should be able to do it, I couldn't. It was just the weirdest thing. And I really noticed it a lot in the last week. And, is an interesting one for me, because, then yesterday I was actually really happy. I only wrote a short paragraph, maybe 5-6 lines long, but I was like, I nailed it. I've actually got that. And been a little bit stuck in where I was going to go with that particular, let's say, section. And I just said, right, no, you have to do it. You got to do it. Don't let what's going on around you get into you. Let's get this done. And I wrote, and I started to really write. I mean, the girl who was sitting across me in the train was going, Jesus, that guy's going to burn the computer. And I'm an old guy. I can't type very well. Do you know what I mean? I was like, and she's like looking at me going, what is he doing? You know what I mean? But anyway, it's it is funny in terms of, there are environments that seem to motivate you more, and that seem to give you also. I find recently that environment has given me inspiration in certain ways to write. So there are certain things that I'm now looking at, and they might have maybe even a year ago or whatever appeared as, oh God, that's horrendous, or that's whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? And I'm suddenly going, oh, actually, hang on a second, that's interesting. I could use that. So environment can be a motivation. It can be a blocker, and also it can be an inspiration, and I think that all of us probably are taking little elements of our environment, or of our daily lives, or of our interactions with people, or whatever it is, and bringing those into our writing. And sometimes, weirdly enough, the darker the environment, the more you're inspired, or certainly I am personally. So yeah. The weirder things are, or the abnormal kind of sort of, I don't know, motivates me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's dark and not very nice, but somehow it's setting the little cogs whirring in my head, So I think, yeah, it's funny, like, an environment can be an awful lot of things. It can be a lot of negative things, but you can make a positive out of it, and take positives out of a negative and make them something. It's fascinating. I think actually the amount that you're influenced by what's going on around, and how much you have to shut yourself down just to make sure that you're doing what you're going to do. Because that, in effect, that's what we have to do. We have to shut ourselves down from everything that's around us in order to focus and to say, right, let's get something written here, you know?
I think getting inspired from, as you described, like a difficult environment, a lot of bad things happening and stuff, it's a very good way to process information as well and to become more empathetic, I find, because, you're reading the news about a war or about, something happening in another country politically that has no immediate effect to you whatsoever. It can be something that just, you read it, you saw it, it's past you now. If you get some sort of inspiration or some sort of idea, like imagine how the people there are feeling, and especially if you put it in paper for yourself, then you create this, world or this, situations where you actually feel in your bones how it would be to be in that situation. What are the outcomes of that? Like, I find myself researching much more than I used to. And I was always, a person who's interested in history and politics and what's going on in the world. But sometimes you think you understand a situation, but when you try to write it, you realize, okay, but there are like 10 more aspects of that topic or that subject that I would need to know in order to write properly about it. And then that makes you think, which means I'm not getting this information from the news or from, whatever people may think or whatever. So I think it makes you more empathetic to the world. It's not, a case of exploiting. I think you take it in yourself, you process it. And then if you find inspiration of it, you might, even become a better person writing about it. You might end up caring more. You might end up, not falling in the trap of misinformation or, people's opinions and all of that. So it can definitely be something positive, but I mean, that's what journaling is as well. It's like, it's considered a really good therapeutic method. Just write about what's happening, what has affected you, what was your reaction to it, and just then have something in front of you that you can reference or that you can, use to negate all the negative emotions a little bit. I find that very, very helpful in writing. So yeah, it's a very good point there, Jeroen, about, the negative things, how we process that, everything.
I firmly believe as well that all negatives have a positive. Like no matter how negative it is, there is some sort of a positive that's going to come out of it. And if that positive is you've written something, well, that's great. There you go. There's your positive. Yeah.
Or if you realize that it could always be worse, like in fantasy, I find myself writing something that could not happen in real life, for example. And then I think, okay, so it could always be worse. And that's like a really big lesson in life. It makes you more accepting to things that are happening, because even the worst case scenario that we could think about our own lives, it could always be 10 times worse. Even a few more things were added to it if the situations were different, if it had happened at a later or earlier point in life. So I think, it's a very, very good lesson in, I guess, dealing with things, becoming more aware of them, but also appreciating how it could always be worse. I find it's a very good way to deal with it.
It could, and I mean, I suppose inversely, it can always be better too. So, like, you get those kind of things from the situation you're in or the environment you're in, and you can look at situations and you can go, yeah, it could always be worse, but it can always be better. It's really, I think when we were talking about the subjects that we were going to bring up, I was like, actually, environment is huge on a writer, or a creative person in any sense of the way. Every environment that they're in has some sort of an impact on what they're actually delivering in terms of their work or their writing or their, it's huge. It's probably maybe one of the biggest factors, because I find certainly every time I write, which is every day, but every day, you feel slightly differently, or there's something that's happened, or the train broke down and you're walking home, or whatever it is. I don't know, and things can be pretty like, and then you kind of get on with it, and you pull something out of it, and you go right. But that means that my writing every day is slightly different, which I find quite interesting to watch that creative flow in the different environments that it's in. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pick in a couple of things that you guys just mentioned. So you say that things can always be better or things can always be worse. Yeah, I also relate to that perspective of the road. Like heaven can be more of a heaven if you make an effort, and for the same token, hell can be more of a hell if you provide your input. So there's always a percentage that it's on us. Like things can be absolutely amazing, but if you're not in the mood, then they are not that shiny. Things can be absolutely crap, but if you're in a good mood, then it's not as annoying as it could be. So I think there is a huge part that it's impacting us. So it's true, like we can be talented, we can be gifted, but if the environment is not there, it's pointless. You can have all the, you can have all the skills, all the abilities, but if you don't have that headspace or that desk, and what I mean by desk is just like as a metaphor, of course, but that place where you can sit and put the writing, then it doesn't matter because things will remain in your head. And I sometimes wonder, like in the past, how many writers or creators didn't manage to put their work together just because the environment was not in their favor. I'm sure plenty. And there were others that were just lucky, or they knew how to build that that space, and then they create plenty of stuff that we still remember because they were just fortunate, or they knew that the environment was essential. And for instance, these days we can always be distracted with social media. Like let's say if you have the phone next to you, I think it's nearly impossible to write more than a paragraph because you will get a WhatsApp message, or there will be a notification about, I don't know, football game, or something you are following on the internet. So nowadays, I think the environment is also about make sure that you are in a place that you connect with yourself, and you are not diverted by things that are not necessarily, say, wars or political events, but also your own routine, because there's always a friend or a family member who thought of you because they saw, say, something funny on the internet or something related to your favorite holiday destination, and they want you to be aware of it. So it's also about finding that tempo where you can create and focus on it. So I'd like to know, like, from your end, how do you make sure that it's only you and yourself when you are writing? Like, I know, Jeroen, you do it on the Dart. So, like, how do you don't let yourself be diverted by let's say, someone who get on the Dart, or the person that is talking next seat on the mobile phone? How do you make sure that your head is fully dedicated in your writing?
Yeah, it's actually, I suppose that is one that I turn off the internet on my computer, so I write on a laptop, right? And I just don't link into the internet when I'm writing, as in I just literally turn it off. And the other thing I do is my phone stays in my pocket. It can buzz away, and whatever it's happening, I'll just leave it. I literally am focusing on writing, and I don't care what. And I'm very kind of how would you say? Yeah, I'm very martial about it in a certain way, in terms of, like, I've headphones on, but there's no music on, right? The headphones are there to cut out all the people around me, and the phone stays in my pocket. If I feel it buzz, I don't care. I'll look at it later on when I'm finished. I get myself very focused, and I cut out every single possible interference. And actually, to be honest with you, that's one of the nicest things I find about writing, is that moment of, this is me and my writing, and nobody else is getting in the way of that. Nobody, no thing, no animal, no nothing is. It's just me on that. I'm some fool who's talking really loud on the phone or whatever. Doesn't matter. I block it all out, headphones on, literally I'm writing. And if that's a 5-minute thing or a 10-minute thing, I always feel afterwards almost rested or at peace, maybe. And it's actually a wonderful feeling because we are absorbing information left, right, and center at all times of the day and night. This is one of the problems of our generation, if you like. And I have this moment of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, where it's just me and the task I'm focused on. So that's how I do it. I literally purposely lock everything out and I do not allow anything in. And then I'll put a full stop and I go, okay, that's the point where I've got to today. And I know that I'm either going to, I'm running out of train stations or whatever it is, and I'm probably not going to write anymore. Full stop, fine, save it, gone. And I just feel this kind of ease, peace. It's quite amazing. So that's just the way I do it.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what I do at home. So if I'm writing, and I usually write in this room where I am today, I make sure that my phone is in the bedroom or in the living room or in the kitchen. I don't care, but not in the same room where am I, because the moment that the phone is vibrating, it's a distraction, and I don't want that. Of course, I can decide to ignore it, but I don't even allow that. I want to make sure that even because I think phones, they have a vibe. There's something about it. Even their presence. I don't know. Maybe it's in my head, but I think that they have a vibe. They have an energy, and if you know it's there, it will tell you, oh yeah, I know you are not looking at me, but I have something here to tell you, and it can distract you. So I think the best thing is to put the phone on a separate room and don't look at it. Like it doesn't exist for 30 minutes. And what's the worst that can happen? Like everyone, like family member, co-workers, friends, they can wait 20-30 minutes. It's nothing really outrageous is going to happen. So I encourage everyone to do that. Maria, what's your technique?
Yeah, it's something similar I discovered by accident actually that works for me. There are only like 2 apps on my phone that I'm allowing notifications for. So and I know that my family or my husband or anyone that wants to speak to me as a matter of urgency, they can call, they won't send a message. So what I do is, even if I have my phone next to me, it will usually be on silent, so it will only flare up if there's an actual phone call. It is very distracting. Like I'm trying, personally, I'm trying to consume less social media than I used to, and I was never, very big on it. It is so distracting. And when I'm writing, I want to be in that world that I'm writing about. And the phone, because usually I don't, write anything that has to do with technology or anything, it just pulls me out of where I am very, very fast. So I will usually have it in the room with me, but I'm building up the resistance to just, check it every time. As I said, I don't have notifications for news, for anything. And, in the process of trying not to be so attached to it, for apps like Instagram, for example, when someone might send you a fun image or a meme or a video or something, I usually only check that in the weekend. I have a dedicated time where I feel, okay, now, I want to be in touch with the world again, and I will go in and I will check my messages and everything. And I know sometimes it might come off as, oh, you don't care to check, but I cannot do this every day. I find it extremely exhausting. I believe myself an introvert as well. So I want to be able to have these conversations or to, consume this media at my own time. I will, reply to a message. I will pick up my phone if it's urgent, but I cannot be, and I expect the same from other people. You cannot be expected to reply to me, oh, because I saw something that, might interest you, so I want you to reply to me right now. Whether that is about writing, people are working different times, people have kids. So I really believe in connecting whenever it's best for everyone. leaving all notifications out. And again, I am I'm very nostalgic about how things used to be with phones, when you couldn't text someone in advance and say, oh, would you be available to call at that? And they would just call you. If you could talk, you would talk. If you couldn't, you'd say, I'll call you in an hour's time. And you would not have to go through the messages as well to get to the actual phone call. But for me, I find music works a lot. So most of the time, I will put some music on my headphones. I will, just have it as a buffer as well. Sometimes I will write a scene or a chapter that is very tied to the music I'm listening to. So it could inspire me. It goes both ways sometimes. But it's really difficult for me to set up a good time of the day to sit down and write. And I find it's usually much easier for me at night. So before I go to bed, I'll bring the laptop upstairs with me. I'll sit down. I might write a bit. But I think the nighttime, because you're not expecting, because I think it's as you said, when the phone is around and during the daytime, you sort of expect to get messages. You sort of expect to get communication from the outside world. But at night, that expectation really, really drops. So I think I'm calmer during the nighttime, or I'm not expecting to be expected as much. But I think it's a good exercise overall, because I don't know, you sit down on Instagram or on TikTok, it's never 5 or 10 minutes. If you let yourself, you can just go from the world for an hour, for 2 hours, for whatever. And I do like going back to the way things were. We're not expecting a same day reply. It always upsets me, when I have to tell someone, no, I'm not ignoring you. I could not, or, I was busy today or yesterday. I could not reply right when you send me the thing. I think it's something else that, social media has built up, especially when you send someone a message and you can see if they've read it or not. It's very limiting, and it extends to, all aspects of our lives, especially when it comes to writing, because it's my own personal thing and I don't want anyone invading in this time, because it's also very difficult to find the time for it or to make time for it better. I try to keep everyone aside. I'm sure they'll understand. And again, if there's an emergency, you'll see your phone ringing, you can pick it up. But there is very, very rarely a case where people cannot wait even for 10 minutes if you say, I'll check my phone when I'm done. So I think, again, it's very good for your mental health not to be attached to your phone. And one advice I'd like to share, because I learned very late in life, and I didn't know about, it's actually medical. So apparently you should not be around screens for an hour at least before you go to bed, especially if it's, the kind of I'm scrolling, seeing a lot of images flare and stuff, because it affects something in your brain that has to do with the quality of sleep. So it's another thing. And I think it's different if you sit down and write. Of course, it's on a screen again. So I'm trying to sit down and write for a time and then switch to a book right before I go to bed. So it's the 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm doing these activities together, and then the book I'm reading might inspire me, or it might make me think of something else. But at the end of the day, when those 2 activities are so, writing your own stuff and reading someone else's, they're so closely related. I think it makes sense to put them in the same environment and, do them very close to one another.
Talking of things you shouldn't do before going to bed, and that's also medical advice. One is drinking. All doctors say drinking is okay. Of course, don't abuse, but drinking is okay with moderation. But allow yourself 30 minutes, 1 hour before between the last drink and the time you get to bed, or even have a glass of water, a pint of water like I'm having here, in between the time you have your last drink and you put your head on the pillow. And I fully subscribe that. And actually, when I drink, I always go back home by foot, if I can, of course. But even if I return, say, from Dublin by using the Dart or the bus, I still need to walk, which is good. You need to get that fresh air before going to bed. Now, when it comes to writing, I think it's more controversial, whether it's a good thing, whether it's bad, because I understand that I don't smoke, so I cannot speak too much about that. I understand that alcohol, it's a door opener. Okay, I think it's undeniable. No, I'm not praising it, but it's for sure a mechanism of telling you that there are some directions that you are not aware of, and you can explore. And maybe there is something there for your writing. But what I'm not very convinced is if you can actually do writing while you are drinking. Because me personally, what I do, and I tend to use this material later on when I have the headspace and as we said before, the environment. I tend to take notes when I write. Of course, the more I write, the worse are the notes. I can see that. First 2 pints, the notes are good. Third, 4 pint, some of them are okay. After the 5th, forget about it. I still write them because, of course, I'm on the 5th pint. But I know that the day after, they are going to be considered garbage. So I would like to get your thoughts on this, whether you are able to mix drinking, or I think you guys don't smoke as far as I know, and writing. And if you do, to what extent? Maybe start with Jeroen.
Well, for me, I can't mix the two. I'll be dead honest. I don't do drugs. It's not of interest to me. But like drinking and writing for me are two alien concepts that shouldn't be mixed in my personal opinion. And it's just something I won't do and I can't do because I know that whatever I'm going to write is going to be absolute rubbish. And it probably won't even be rubbish the next day, but it'll be rubbish right then too. And, I can't read my own handwriting. So, like, if I was drinking, I wouldn't be able to read it even less. That'd be a problem. Also, I don't know. For me, it's almost like, how would I describe it? That kind of act of writing is such a switch off for me and such a removal from the normal, I feel like, that if I was to mix, say, alcohol with that, I just wouldn't get that fix of the removal from the normal, if you get me, because it would be mixing two things that, for me, I like to have a pint. That's okay, and I like to write, but I just couldn't ever do them together, and I've never done it, and I never will, because I just would be like, no, that's just not going to work, and also because when I'm writing, I like to have a certain, like I just described, there's a certain kind of a focus mentality, focusing on something. And when you're drinking, you can't really focus on anything at all, and you certainly can't just not distract yourself with your environment and things like that. It would be so easy because you're just you're whatever. It's just something I've never done, and when it's quite amazing when you see how many writers back in the day. Right now, I'm talking about back in the day, and I firmly believe that was just a different generation, maybe, or there was a different mentality about certain things. But if you see the amount of writers who were alcoholics, the amount of writers who were drug addicts of one form or another, and obviously clearly wrote under the influence. But they still managed to write something that was decent, even if it was mad. I'm like, well, fair play, but not for me. I just couldn't do it, and I wouldn't want to do it. It's a weird thing. It's something like I would feel quite strongly about not combining, if you get me. And I don't know how those people did that. I don't know how they managed to, on whatever it was, LSD, alcohol, you name it. I mean, you look at a lot of creative people and writers and stuff like that, a lot of them, were using some substance of some kind. I just don't know how they did it. I kind of go, hats off, like Lewis Carroll, you know what I mean? Alice in Wonderland. That dude must have been out of his bleeding banana. Like, you read that and you're like, seriously? Like, what the hell? Like, do you know what I mean? but it's a classic. You know, people love it. It's still an amazing, you know, book or whatever. But what were you on, dude? Like, what?
And Jeroen, and it's a book for kids. That's the
100%.
a book for kids that was written under the influence of drugs. You know, that's it,
Yeah.
which is
100%.
very ironic. Yeah,
100%. Which means that kids, in a way, could be more open to, their imaginations are more open than adults are. We know that. So, you know, but 100%, and it's not just that one. There's loads of other ones where you're kind of going, Jesus H. Christ. Like, I remember reading a book by Timothy Leary, like, who was kind of like the godfather of LSD. And you're going, I can't get to page 3 here. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just not following. Like, I need to be on something to follow him because he's clearly off his bleeding nut. You know what I mean? But again, it's a modern classic, you know? And yeah, I've respect for it, but it's not something I would do. It's just not something I can mix, or would I want to? And it's also become more as well, like, you know, if I was having a drink, that's having a drink. If I'm writing, it's writing. Or maybe I just divided those things very much for myself, you know?
Yeah. No, because I think, like, in the past, like, people were not able to access entertainment in the same way we are now. You know, because now, as we were just saying, like, I'm not going back to the previous topics, but I have to, just for a couple of seconds. If you want to get busy with you know, with some sort of event, just switch on your laptop or open or look at your phone. There's something going on. There's something going on. You won't be bored. You know, there's always something that will you know, impact your mind one way or another. Whereas back in the days, like, you know, after sunset, what do you do with yourself? That's if you live on your own. I think drugs or alcohol. And I'm not like justifying this, but in some sense, I think that's the rationale. They didn't know what to do with themselves. They start drinking or taking some substances, and then because they were creative, they will start writing, because what else could they do? And some of them were gifted, and maybe that's why they come up with some masterpieces like Alice on the Wonderland. Whereas these days, if you want some dopamine, you just look at the phone and watch, I don't know, Guns N' Roses in the 90s. If you miss like good hard rock concert and you are seated at home and it's, I don't know, 8 p.m. or even 6 p.m. in January, and nothing is going on. You know, it's a Tuesday night. There are always options. So I think these creative people use these avenues as an opportunity to do something out of their lives, because otherwise they would go nuts, and some went nuts, as we know. Some even took their lives away because they couldn't bear solitude and some degree of depression, and maybe those substances and the creative work kept them going. So in that sense, it was positive. Now I'm full with you that things have changed dramatically. Like today, we kind of write to escape the road, to have that buffer, to have that to sit on that corner, even though that corner can be in the middle of others, but it's our moment. And before, there were not that many options, so people have to use whatever was available to make sure that they could get it to that state of mind. So probably that was rational, but who knows? This is just my guess. Maria, I haven't seen you drinking, so I'm not going to assume you do. So
No, I have lots of colorful mugs like this one, but there's usually water or Pepsi in them. That's as far as I go. No, I never found the idea of drinking appeal, to be honest. I will have like a glass of wine every now and then, but even back in university, when that's, I guess, your biggest experience with alcohol, or the time in your life where you might be prone to more drinking, I think for me, the idea of not being present, that was really scary, and that's something I wasn't interested in. I think when you allow yourself to drink a lot, maybe to smoke a lot, to do drugs and stuff, you're letting go of the present. And yeah, you can argue that all those substances and alcohol and whatnot might bring a truer self, which I can see why maybe some literary works are the way they are, because the writer was not bothered to think, what will society think of me, what will people think of me, and they will just spit in other guts in paper. No, I find that I don't want to let go of my original thoughts and my feelings. I would rather face them head on, whether that's something that I want to deal with or not. I can see the appeal for people that, find drinking, for example, or doing drugs a way of escaping. But I think it's very dangerous to put yourself under any sort of addiction, whether that's one of the hard stuff, or it's caffeine, or it's gaming. So yeah, I think I've been very fortunate in my life. I think that I was never in my environment as well. I didn't have a lot of exposure to it. People around me didn't really drink. My family didn't drink. So not, to avoid it or anything. It will just be a glass of wine every now and then, I guess. So I grew up with it as being something that, can be fun if you're in the mood for it, but I will treat it the same way I treat orange juice, for example. I'll have one if I'm in the mood. I won't have one if I'm not in the mood. But again, it all ties back to I don't know if I sat down and I wrote having, really drunk, what will come out of it? Maybe it will be something that I would be not proud to read afterwards. Maybe it would be something that is not true. My mind, pushed it forward. It seemed a good idea at the time. I don't want to go to the dark place that it seems that people go when they when they abuse substances, let's say, just to include everything. And yeah, I think, the idea of the bohemian writer, I think you called it, is a product of its time. As you said, exactly, people did not have anything else to do. I don't think it's an excuse now. If you have an environment of people around you as well, to just let yourself go by that much and without criticizing it, I just never found it appealing. And when it comes to writing specifically, I would like to be the owner and in perfect control of what I put down in paper. I don't want it to be a product of something diluted, perhaps. So no, not really an appealing there for me. I don't know, there might be people out there that, drinking maybe a moderate amount or something, maybe it helps them focus, maybe it helps their minds flow. It's, I guess, how you see that, people that are very shy, sometimes they have a glass or two in them and then they start talking more. It helps them, bypass agoraphobia a little bit, perhaps, or something. But I don't think it's for everyone. And when it comes to me, I've fared pretty well with it, I think, so far. It's not something that I would like to explore, or, knowing in our age the risks of, alcohol and smoke and that more than people back in the day used to. I don't think it's something I'd go near, to be honest, writing or no writing. Just I think it's good to be present and in the moment, and you really lose control with those things, and then you might not be able to gain control of it again. So, which is a problem for me if I want to write someone who's drunk or has a certain addiction. I'd have to ask people how they feel, or have to research it, because I've never been, drunk myself. So I don't know.
I can help you. That's fine. You can ask me.
Thank you very much. I'll come straight to you.
I'm the still number 2 there, so you can ask me too.
Okay, good. The next podcast will be about helping Maria write about drunkards.
I was thinking here, Maria, it's fine that you don't drink, but I don't know if I can forgive you for saying that you don't drink ouzos, because I'm a big fan of ouzos. Every time I think of Greece, I think of ouzos. I love it. That's the first thing I order when I arrive.
I'm sorry, Maria, but I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Anything with that aniseed flavor, anything. I mean anything. No, thank you. Please take it away from us.
I'm not a big fan, but I might interest you in sweet wine from my city. Actually, it's called Mavrodaphne. It's really, really good. I mostly use it for cooking because I said I don't drink, but that's when I do most of my drinking. I think, you put half a glass of something, I'll put it in the food, and then you go, oh, that's good, okay. So my frequent drinking is while I cook. So yeah, I'm sure we can find
drinking and cooking is okay, not drinking and writing, but drinking and cooking is fine.
Drinking and cooking is better, yeah. Drinking is safe, I guess. Yeah, I'll see if I really lose control and just get drunk every time I cook with wine. That there will be another episode about that specifically. More of an intervention kind, perhaps, but still.
Yeah, it's like that kind of aniseed flavor. I cannot. No, thanks. Not in a drink, not in food, not in anything. There's a couple of things that I really, really don't like, and one of them is the aniseed. So I'm sorry, it's not an anti-Greek thing or an anti-Southern France thing or whatever it is. But
that would make me anti-Greek as well. I'm not a big fan. Some wines, yeah, absolutely, I can agree with that. But Ouzo is more, connected to having a bite in a tavern with it, trying different foods, starters, whatever you have. So it's usually very food related, and in that way I would have a sip if I was with people perhaps, but no, I can't imagine myself being at home alone down in Ouzo writing nonsense on the laptop. Never say never, but I don't find it appealing.
They actually opened a Greek restaurant just a few meters away from where I live here in Bray. And,
really? Okay.
Yeah, and the food, at least, to my understanding, it's good. Just I don't have Ouzos. That was the only disappointment. No Ouzos.
There is a restaurant in Greystones that we go to sometimes. It's very, very good. I think they have Ouzo there. So the Wicklow area is definitely good for Greek food and drink. So we should do a live from the restaurant.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. You read my mind. We'll do our first live in Greystones, because it has to be in Wicklow, with a bottle of Ouzos. But I won't be the moderator for that one, just so you know. But otherwise, it'll be the first and the last live of our career. That's it.
Probably.
You're done. You're done. Yeah. But it's funny.
I think you'd be the moderator, Maria, in that situation.
I think so. Yes. If you are outside drinking, and those are big shoes. Yeah. So I think this figure of the romantic or bohemian writer or creator drinking and writing. I grew up with that, because when I was in my late teenager times, 18, 19, and I hung out with a few writers in Portugal who were, let's say, around 50, and they were some of them were that type. So I saw it, or they were that type when they were younger, but there was still some of it on them. So I kind of admire some of their traits, but I also saw that it wasn't always positive. Like a few, they could have achieved way more without alcohol. 100%. Way more. 100%. And it was a pity, because you could see the talent was there. And it goes back to the previous topic, that they didn't have the right environment. Let's say they wrote 2 masterpieces. They could have wrote 10, just because they were into drinking or they were always messed up. They couldn't. But you can say that's part of the character, part of the genius, and that's fine. That's fine. Just we all have different stories. So if they were meant to write 2 masterpieces, it is what it is. They'll be remembered, and we all will read their books and tell, look, these guys were very talented. They could do way more, but they were meant to write only 2, and that's okay. I think we also need to accept, like, destiny, as in there's this concept of the Stoics of amor fati, that that's your destiny, make the most of it. So if you were a drunkard and you were here to write 2 masterpieces, that was your fate, and you achieve it. If you were to be this quiet writer, shy, always seated in the room and not socializing, and maybe your writing became repetitive because your life exposure was limited, that's fine. That's who you are, you know. So I think we all have different traits. It also goes back to that theme of the awareness, you know who you are, and make sure that's your most valuable card. You know, because if you have some degree of self-awareness, you think you'll be able to do something remarkable. Now, and of course, alcohol can be toxic for that. Like I like to write or to take notes when I'm drinking. If I'm drinking by myself, I did that, as a matter of fact, last Friday, so very recent. And I didn't look at my notes yet, but I know what happens. And so before I was used to bring my pen and paper and take my notes. That's in the traditional way. Now I just use my phone, and I don't really care, especially the more I drink, if I'm typing correctly. I just want to make sure that I can read the day after or after a week. So they are just notes, and sometimes there is some material that I can utilize on a poem. And typically, like at least in my case, I don't know, guys, you're not much into poetry. Alcohol is better for poetry because it's like a moment. Something is going on. It's like a message. Like you won't be able to, let's say, to write a short story while you are drinking. It's just something is going on, and you are given this task of putting it in a few verses. Now, you need to work on the verses because there's something that needs to be moved. There's a word there that it's not necessary, but there is a beginning, and I think I owe that to alcohol, certain type of poetry, this spontaneous poetry, and even at least to me, because I'm a big fan of Irish pubs myself. I even like to write about Irish pubs, and of course you cannot write about Irish pubs without referring alcohol, otherwise it doesn't make much sense. It has to be there, and of course you don't need to be on the beer, but you need to know how does it feel to drink a few pints. Otherwise, it's it will sound unnatural, and probably it won't resonate with the reader. So that brings to our next topic, as of cultural appropriation. So we can start with that. Can a sober person write about a drunkard, and the other way around? Can an alcoholic talk about a regular life of a 9-to-5 family, stable routine? Because if it's not you, I think that's what cultural appropriation means. How far can you go? And then I will also drop this topic because if it's fiction, by definition, fiction is fine because all what you are doing is using your imagination, whether is it a clear reproduction of reality or not. It depends if that's so objective, but let's wrestle with this idea of how much can we put ourselves in someone's shoes if you never wore those shoes in the past. I start with you, Maria, for this.
Yeah, I think it's important to, if you don't have first-hand experience on something, to talk to someone who does. Make sure you understand what it means. Talking about being drunk, for example, like I myself have never been drunk. I wouldn't, be able to write it in a convincing way, I think, if nothing else. So I would make sure that I've spoken to someone and I've asked the right questions. Make sure that I understand what it feels like, what you could do while you're drunk, what you wouldn't do while you were drunk, just to get an idea and put it on paper. Again, on fantasy, it's easier because I can just invent a drink that has certain implications and has certain, makes people act a certain way, and then I'm scot-free. It can do whatever I wanted to do. But when you're writing about other things, and especially if it's something more emotional, like, I don't know, losing a parent, for example, I would feel very uncomfortable writing about it because I would think, for example, maybe I'm, not giving it the depth that it deserves. So for these situations, I think I would like to speak to someone, just, make sure I understand it a little bit better. But the thing that you can always rely on is the experience, your first-hand experience, even if it hasn't happened to you, how you see someone going through something. Like, I've never been drunk myself, but I have been around drunk people. So I could write, for example, if I don't feel comfortable writing in first person about a drunk person, I could write the experience of someone seeing them do something or behave in a certain way, or how I perceive like someone who has had something very dramatic in their life that hasn't happened to me. And when specific cultures are concerned as well, I don't like the idea of us being limited to our individual countries. For example, like, I can only write about Greek mythology. I could never attempt a retelling or inspiration from Nordic mythology, for example. I think cultures were meant to be shared, same as food, or the idea of you have your friends over and you share a drink or something. I think those are activities and those are ideals that were meant to be spread around, as long as you're respectful. And by respectful, I mean, for Greek mythology, for example, something that bugs me a lot, because I have the utmost respect for the god of the underworld, but when you see him a lot of time being portrayed, people will, portray him as a very bad, evil person, and they say, oh, Hades, he wants everyone to die, he's on a campaign to kill everyone and have them all in the underworld. And this sometimes will upset me, because, okay, you want to use in a story, you want to make it about it, okay, but you have, in my opinion, and in this specific example, to explain why you're disrespecting the norm, because Hades, in this case, was a god that was very feared, but he was very revered as well, and he was considered fair on top of everything. And he did not want people to just die, because he had to manage the underworld and it had to be done a certain way. So he was very strict about the rules, but he never wished ill upon the world, as far as we know from, Greek writings, for example. So someone who just writes and really thinks that he was evil, or for mythology specifically, maybe it's not the best example of cultural appropriation, but it's something that as a Greek would annoy me, because you're taking something that we know is a certain way and then you're twisting it into something else without explaining. Like, I could accept a story where it says, Hades, we know him to be such and such, but there was one example, there was one time in his life, for example, where he turned really, really evil, and then talk to me about that. But taking the whole thing, portraying it as something else, which is an issue, because Greek mythology retellings are a very popular thing these days in movies. We have like couple of movies coming up. You see lots of books around. Or the idea, for example, that all Greeks do is sing and dance all day. It's that kind of thing that would bug me. I am very happy when people come to me and say, I went to Greece, or, like what you said, I like Ouzo, or I saw that movie and I thought, oh, that seems really fun, and want to learn about it more. But when you take something and you twist it to something it really is not, and you believe it to be different, whether it is what I think feels like to get drunk or what you would think Hades is, I think there should be limits. I'm not saying make everything, try to make a story behind everything to explain everything, but there is a big difference between accepting something for what it is or for what it was, and twisting it and taking it away from what it was. And when it comes to culture, it extends to music, to dancing, to the mythology, to the history. And like, personally, the Greek is being in the center for a lot of like political and geographical debate. And it always feels bad when I see the culture not being respected for what it was. And, we're trying to make it something that it isn't. Or the Mamma Mia movies made everyone think that we just spend all our time sipping coffee and dancing around in islands. I'm very happy for people to explore it, and for me to be a part of helping them exploring it, if they want. But I think there's a certain point as well where everyone goes crazy and they're afraid to touch something, as is the case, for example, with a great debate in the hair industry, braids. Some people say that braids originated from Africa and white women should not tie their hair in braids. And some people say, well, the Vikings were doing braids as well and they were completely disconnected. So if I do a Viking braid instead of an African braid, is that okay? And then you get like caught in this craziness. And for me, as long as you want to try something respectfully, or like, I'm learning Japanese, for example, I'm a massive fan of the Japanese culture. I performed Japanese theater a couple of times. I'm learning the language. I'm reading on the history. if I would offend someone because I put on a kimono and I visited a temple to pay respects to something at a certain time of year, for example, that would hurt me because I'm doing it with the utmost respect. I want to learn more about it. I have educated myself up to a point where I know what I'm putting myself to. So I think it is a very fine line, but personally, and especially when it comes to writing, I would hate for stories to be wasted because people were afraid to touch anything, as much as I would hate it if people just twist something until it's completely something else. If you want to write about God, you can create your own. Don't just claim, for example, that Hades was like that or Hercules was like that and go against what we know. But again, in literature, retelling's very, very difficult to know if you're happy or not happy with them. Usually I found myself being very unhappy unless it's Stephen Fry, because Stephen Fry just narrates it. It doesn't seem like he's trying to change it. So it's why I would go with one of his books, for example. So someone who's narrating the mythology in his own words rather than, oh, I'm writing a book about Achilles, for example, and I'm making it very, very different to what it was. So yeah, very, very difficult topic. At least that's where I stand on it. But I would rather try something aware of what it is rather than, going around thinking, oh, it's Halloween, I will put on something and, be very disrespectful. It's just, it can be very extreme as well.
Yeah. I think it's a sign of the current times, this disease, that you have to be very careful when you speak about some other culture. Let's just go back to the 19th century. I think at least 50% of what Nietzsche wrote was about Greece. And that was fine. Nietzsche was writing about Greek mythology, Greek philosophy, Greek culture, Greek politics, Greek this, Greek that, and he made his works out of it. And he is one of the most amazing thinkers of the human history. And it's not that I agree with everything that Nietzsche said, okay, but for sure he was deeply influenced by Greece. He was a lover of the Greek culture, and during his time, no one pointed fingers on him for drinking Greek culture. That was fine. I mean, we all knew that the philosophers from the Middle Ages, from the Renaissance, from the 19th century, they all owe a lot to the Greek thinking. So they all refer the Greeks all the time. And that was never an issue. They would study the Greeks. They will discuss Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, you name it. And sometimes they will call out a couple of things, and sometimes they will just praise them because that was their opinion. But we live in a time that, we don't know what Greece is, so we need to be quiet. I think if we go that way, okay, we can just wipe out all the bookshelves we have. We can just destroy and bomb all the libraries and bookshops and go back to the Stone Age. Is that what we want? I don't think so, because we are very thankful for what Western civilization and other civilizations provided to us. Not only ours, but I think we should be grateful that we are where we are, because our ancestors were trying to improve their conditions, their environments, and by extent we receive the fruit of those efforts. So why not take our hat off and say, okay, I'm here expressing my gratitude. I wanna, or if I'm not that happy, let's say with the way that philosophy went with Descartes, you can always argue about it. You don't need to be French. I understand that. The only thing I understand is some of the works, they don't get properly translated. And I know people, for instance, who are like, I don't speak German, okay, but I know people who do, and they read the likes of Nietzsche, Heidegger, Hegel, Kant. I'm talking about philosophy now in the original language, and they argue that what we receive, it's not exactly what was the thinking of those guys. When I hear that, I say nothing, because my knowledge of German language is very small. So you gotta be humble. You gotta you got to understand, like, how far can you go with your comments, and when is your time to learn? But overall, I think as creators, I think we should have free pass, as you said, Maria, with a degree of respect. That's simple.
But like, imagine if the Romans were not allowed to be influenced by Greece. Where would technology be these days? For hundreds or if not thousands of years, Roman technology was unsurpassed. If we had this thing of, but we can't say anything about Greek philosophy, we need to leave it untouched because we're not Greek, or we cannot base our gods or our alphabet. What would have happened without the Greeks got it from the Phoenicians, the Romans got it from the Greeks. Like, you cannot, it's this exchange that helps humanity progress, I guess. Of course, it has to be respectful, but like in that example, for example, what would bother me is, it's, I think, a very good thing that the Romans were so inspired by Greece. It also meant that at the time, that they left us alone. They didn't bother us as much as they did other countries they have, other places they have conquered. But like, what bothers me is someone saying, the Roman gods were original. No, their pagan gods were original. Janus and all the rest of their gods, Venus and what were the equivalent of the Greek gods. So that, for example, I would find disrespectful, someone not having the knowledge for it. But then it all circles back to education. If you're educated enough, or if you make a point to educate yourself for certain things, I think that wipes out the possibilities of being disrespectful. If you make a choice, to give a try for another culture. And as a writer as well, I at the moment, I don't have, a big over that contains things for so many different cultures that I can write about. If I am inspired by something, I'm making it in a way that it's not like I'm not writing about Japan, for example. There's a ritual, for example, that I might find interesting and I will try to encompass. I will get inspired by it. I will give it a different form. I will tweak it to how it works for me, but it's no longer Japanese. And I'm not going to present it as Japanese. It's where you get being influenced by something is very, very different than taking it and twisting it around and say, the Japanese actually did that, for example. It is very difficult to navigate around it, but I'm very pro exchange. But yeah, you'd have to make a point to educate yourself on it and listen to people. Like, for example, if I write something and it offends someone from a certain culture, I'd still want to listen to them and understand why was this offensive to you, why you think I should not have written this. And it's something that, to be honest with you, because exactly I write fantasy and I get inspired, even if I think of something and I've never seen it in another culture. Maybe I don't remember seeing it, but I don't know, maybe I wrote something about the Sumerians, for example. I don't remember reading it, but maybe that's where I, got it from in theory. So it's very difficult to be sure that you're inventing something original. So I think the best thing you can do was just let it inspire you, but not take it as it was, put it and present it as a completely different thing.
Jeroen, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I would be like, I think that you have to a certain extent. I think when you're writing, you should be able to have a certain amount of free license, right? And I say that with a massive caveat, and that caveat is with respect, right? So to me, if you can't say it to someone's face, then don't write it, right? So if you can't turn around to somebody and say what it is that you're writing, then you can't write it. Do you get me? So like, I think, you have to be, because especially in these days, we're going to insult somebody in some way, somehow, right? Because everybody is there to be insulted, right? Or to be, I don't know, disrespected or whatever else. So we can't think like that. We have to think like, well, I'm going to write it like I'm going to write it, but I'm going to write it with respect, right? Respect for those people, or for that situation, or for that, whatever cultural phenomenon, whatever it is that you're going to do. But like Maria, I think the culture is there to be shared, and everybody's culture is there to be shared. And you can pick and choose bits of culture from other things and other societies and go, do you know what, that's pretty cool, or whatever, but as long as you write it with respect, right? And and I would add to what Maria was saying about education. If you educate yourself about something and you make your mind up about whatever it is that it is, and you've really done some research into it, then you can go ahead and you can write it in my terms. You know what I mean? And even if it is becoming where somebody goes, I'm insulted by that, that's taken my, whatever. Well, then let's talk about it. Then what is it that has so insulted you? I never meant to insult you. I was trying to be respectful to you or to your whatever it is that it is. But you can't be like in this kind of empty void that we live in this society that we're in, where you can't say anything about anybody because everybody's going to get insulted. Well, sorry, do you know what I mean? That's kind of, do you know what I mean? Like I really believe that as a writer and as a creative person, you've got to be able to be allowed to say what it is that you feel or to say what it is you think, as long as it's done with a modicum of respect. And as long as you can say it to somebody, to their face, then you can write it, If you can't say it to somebody, well, then you shouldn't be writing it. It's as simple as that, and there's cultural approach, like everybody is taking little bits of everybody else's culture all the time. That's just the world we live in. That's the human nature as well. Also, we're trying to learn about other people or other cultures, or let's say Greek mythology or whatever it is. We're maybe trying to learn, or we have a fascination with Japan, for example, right? So in trying to learn, you're trying to educate yourself. You're trying to gain, more information, let's say. But you've got to be careful about it, and you can't go to disrespect somebody or to take away their rights. But you can't be also all the time sort of, let's say, politically correct. You know what I mean? You gotta write what you feel, and you've got to have that license, that freedom to say, yeah, this is what I feel. And maybe I'm not totally educated on it, and maybe I'm not totally right on it, and maybe you have a different opinion. Let's talk about it. Let's not just go, I'm insulted by that. Well, so you are, you know what I mean? Why are you insulted? Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I said something wrong, but I have to be allowed to say it. I have to be free to say what it is that I think, about whatever. And I just think that a lot of the time now, we have to be so careful about what it is that we say or what it is that we really, you know what I mean? Everybody's going to get insulted sometime, and everybody's going to feel that their toes have been stood on, and, oh, you said this. Yeah, I said that because I thought it. And I have to be free to be able to think it. You mightn't agree with me, but that doesn't mean that I can't say it, But I always have the premise, and again, the same thing. I don't have a huge amount of work where it involves, let's say, other people's cultures, that kind of thing. But in my thinking is always, can I say it to someone's face? And if I can say it to someone's face, without kind of, going, oh my God, I'm about to, if I can say it, I can write it. It's quite simple. And we have to be free to think like we're going to think and to write like we're going to write, and not be always afraid, oh God, somebody's going to feel very offended by that. Well, everybody's going to get offended. Do you know what I mean? Get used to it.
Maybe and maybe Jeroen, it's not a bad thing, because if you write and your writing is innocuous, maybe it's not good writing, because there must be some degree of impact. You don't want to write and things remain the same. Of course, exactly. I'm not saying writing for the sake of insulting, but if I have to pick between writing and nothing happens, and writing and someone is angry about it, I go for the latter. For the latter. I'm sorry, because otherwise, why do I write? Because you want to write with the objective of seeing some effects. It's like every single action of yours, you do it with a purpose. Like, you
Yeah.
drink water because you are thirsty. You go to sleep because you want to be with good energy levels day after. You write because you want someone to read and at least think about it. Some people will learn. Some people will think about what you said. Some people will disagree. Some people will be mad, but that's okay. That's part of the communication. Can I jump into? I'm not jumping. Can I bring cinema into this? Just come to my mind now. So there is a movie from 2002, and I watch it, which is unbelievable because I barely watch movies. I'm going to be very open with this. I watch like 2 movies in a period of 12 months. 12 months, which is nothing. So I'm not really like a cinema guy. But back in 2002, there was a movie called Japón, which means Japan in Spanish, just for people who don't know. And I know you know, but for the viewers, from a Mexican director called Carlos Reigadas. Have you heard of it? Probably not, but just before I dig on the movie. So the movie is called Japón, okay? But it happens in Mexico, and there is no reference of Japan whatsoever in the movie. The movie is about a character who is depressed, suicidal, and decides to leave Mexico City to isolate himself in a Mexican village. And I can't remember now because I watch it, believe me or not. He goes there with the intent of taking his life away. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this is probably the director never put his feet on Japan, or barely knows Japan. So, does he own the license to, like, just taking into consideration these factors or these elements? Does he own the license to call the movie Japan? Probably was just a provocation, just to raise some eyebrows and bring people to the to the cinema and watch it, or it's just nonsense in your view, taking consideration these factors. So it's a very dark movie. There's no reference of Japan. It seems that the director is taking the piece of the audience, but he uses that probably, like, to my understanding, he's using Japan as an unknown place. So the man decides to go far and doesn't know exactly what to expect. Now, I would also argue that I think the statistics when it comes to Japan when it comes to suicide in Japan, they are not quite positive. So I think maybe Japanese people can be upset about it. Is it a cheap provocation? Is it something that he can get on with, in your opinion, or how do you see it?
I mean, I think he's allowed to call it what he wants to call it. Like, if that's what he felt that it should be called, and then call it that. I don't see a problem with it. Does it reflect Japan badly? I don't think so. I think it's just a naming thing. That's just my opinion. But I'm not Japanese. But that's the way I'd see it. I'd say, well, if that's what he wants to call it, that's what he wants to call it.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would. I would fully agree with you, Jeroen. The worst that can happen by naming it Japan, it's just a bad title. I mean, it's director's problem. But people can say, why the heck did you call it Japan? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It's not about insulting the Japanese. It's just you would look bad because you came up with a name that has no relation whatsoever with the content. So the license is there, but then whether it's a good decision or not to use the title, it's up to the public. The public will judge, and the director needs to live with people's feedback. That's it. Maria, anything you want to add on this? Or
I agree with that. I mean, I'd have to see the movie, I think, to have a very informed opinion about it. But from what I've heard, I think it's absolutely okay. What would have bothered me is if he had marketed this as a documentary.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like, yeah, this is not accurate. Like, you cannot, say if it's a work of fiction, it's a work of fiction. We do reserve the right to disagree with it. It doesn't mean that because it's out there and someone published, or if it's been a huge success. Like, I've got great beef with one of the most successful books of our time that's about Greek retelling. But that's my opinion. People have rediscovered Greek culture with it. They seem to like the style of writing. They seem to like the story. It's my opinion. Like, I wouldn't buy it for a friend. I wouldn't buy it for myself, for example. But that's where the argument stops for me. And you want to call it Japan because you got inspired or because it alludes to something. That's upon me to interpret if I watch the film. But I would not, apart from it, me expecting to see a movie about Japan and not seeing a movie about Japan, because that would bug me. But no, it wouldn't. I wouldn't find it offensive. I wouldn't find it upsetting or anything. And if it was, and putting, Greece in Japan's shoes in this situation, unless you made a movie about how bad Greece is, for example, and you presented of all of these are actual facts, there's nothing good about the Greeks and something like that, that would upset me, because I think that's unfair and that it's not true. If you made a movie or a documentary about the financial crisis in Greece, for example, that is fact. Or if you get inspired by it to write about a country that has a fictional country, for example, that has a very similar story to Greece, and you want to explore how history led to it being the way it is, that's absolutely fine. But in my opinion, when it comes to movies and in art in general, as long as you don't, market it or present it as a documentary, and you say this is fiction, this is how I interpret a situation or a country or a word or a part of culture, I think it's fine. Like, at least we should make some room to explore what other people get inspired by and what feelings would, Japan make you feel, and giving it a chance instead of condemning it first. And I think that extends to how we view other people as well. I have to give people a chance. I can't just form an opinion out of thin air. And then unless you, really commit to how I think of you, I don't give you a chance. I think it's the same with cultural appropriation and art. You have to explore it first. You have to know what you're talking about. You can't just comment something and leave it at that and never give it a chance. And at the end of the day, this is still content. I can choose not to consume it, or I can choose to speak against it if I find it offensive. But I would still expect that people will write film, because that is their right. Then we're going into free speech, and in oral collective cultures, I think there hasn't been one that really claimed in its past or in its history or in its mythology that the lack of free speech was a good thing. So I'd rather something being out there and reserving the right to bash it if I really disagree with it, than live in a society where everyone is afraid to say something because the appropriation police is chasing us.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. I absolutely 100% agree with you. And I think that it's really important for writers or creators or thinkers or whatever to have that freedom and that license to be allowed to put out what they think. And you can stand and you can argue against it, and you might not be able to see the same ideas that the person had, fine. But like, I do think that it's all about the freedom part, and with limits and with respect. But like, I really don't want to live in a society, and we are going that way, but I don't want to live in a society where everything is controlled because of fear of, oh, well, somebody's gonna, like, seriously, guys, come on. Like, we don't live in an environment that's completely clean and oh, you can't do that and you can't say that, and come on. Like, we're human. That's, what I mean? That's what it is to be human, is that somebody is going to get offended.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because
it's otherwise, a good thing.
Like, I'm very concerned with the society sanitization. Very much concerned, because I think this sanitization will destroy society and, to a degree, civilization. And then what? What will be stuck with what we have? Because I think, like, humanity as about to develop. But if we start castrate our bright minds, God bless us in the future. God bless the new generations.
Yeah.
They will be sad. They'll look back and think, wow, like my parents, my grandparents, they were more modern than I am. When it should be the other way around, no? Like we should, when we look back, we think, okay, they were advanced, but not that much. Because let's say now we have technology. But if we continue that way, what happen to creative minds? What will happen to inventive individuals? They will run away, or they will just live in top of the mountain because they will be afraid of saying something different. And that's something that I perceive these days, that I think it's very much of an issue, because before we'll look at artists as being anti-establishment, and now it's not the case. Like the artists, like even punk rockers are echoing what the system is telling them to say. It wasn't like that like in the 80s. Like I remember, like, let's say when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a rocker because then I would shake society. And that would be my way to sell how unhappy I was with the current state of things. These days it's not like that. Like first there's barely any rocker or punk rocker, and then the music stars, they're all part of the establishment. It's so sad, and then it will be appealing. Now, if you would be a rebel, you'll be admired by your friends. You'll be popular. If you say, sorry, Marie, if you'll be a man, you'll be popular among women. That would be a good thing. So because you would dare to be different, and you'll say it out loud. Whereas these days, like most writers who are known or that are doing well, they are just part of the establishment. They go to mainstream TV. They are interviewed by the official journalists, and they don't say anything outrageous. They don't really provoke. Some, they think they are on the other side of the narrative, but they aren't. They are absolutely part of the establishment, and I think it's not only sad. It's not even entertaining, because you want to get that spark from people who are able to perceive things from a different perspective, and are able to put that in words or in a painting or in a song. And that's not the case. Like in that sense, I don't like to sound nostalgic, but there's no other way to relate to the current state of arts.
I agree with you. I think that there's certain the rebellion of art is gone. Or certainly if it's not gone, it's definitely going. And it's not just in writing, it's not just in painting or any other medium. The rebellion, I am going to put something out there that's going to change people or shake people or shock people, whatever. That's gone. And that, yeah, you're right. It's a sad reflection on where we are. But also there's no need just to be rebellious to be rebellious either. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that's absolute muck as well. I mean, and that's in a lot of different things. Now you have, like, I don't know, people you have some elements in art and whatever who literally are trying to be rebellious only to be rebellious, and only to be, oh, you're such a shock factor, or you're whatever. And that's complete Horlicks as well, But I do think that the decline of the rebellious thinker, in whatever way it is presented, is it's a sad fact, it's a sad reality,
No, I think, conformity for the sake of it, it's an enemy of education, it's an enemy of communication, it's an enemy of progress. If we all think alike, how will we move forward? How will we, coming from a culture that people fight a lot and disagree on a lot of things and they're very open about it, I can't imagine a world where we all have to think the same. Like, I enjoy being proven wrong sometimes, or being able to prove people wrong when we're talking about something, or understanding, getting more open-minded, because that thing specifically, I only thought of it a certain way, but then I talked to someone else and they explained it to me. It's very good. It's very good for your soul. It's what makes you evolve as a person. I think it would be very boring. Like, how you say when you're dating and you're like, I couldn't live with someone who's exactly like me. And you want to find an opposite, someone who will complement your strengths and, balance your weaknesses and whatever, instead of finding a clone, for example. Like, imagine a whole world of them. It is boring when you can't speak your mind. And I found it to be true, especially in corporate, because you're not allowed to have opinions on everything. And I respect how that is put in place for the most time, so that there will not be conflict. But at the same time, they're trying to promote a culture of a family, but it's a family that doesn't speak. It's a family that doesn't exchange opinions. It's a family where you're not really free to speak about your experiences and where you're from, because it might upset someone else, because it might, you might make someone else think of something they don't want you to think. So it's very, very limited. And you can see it, if in this very small environment, it gets expanded into the whole society, it will be boring more than anything else, boring and dangerous. So no, even if I'm wrong, believe in something, I would really respect the person that comes up to me and say, for this reason, I thought you should not have said that, or you should not have written it, or what were you trying to do here? I'm not getting it. It's how you evolve, essentially, how you get better as a writer, as a person, as a friend, as a spouse, as whatever. So I don't know, God forbid we keep going where we're going, because then we'll all have to be, a hive mind, and that's never good.
Yeah, and that is unfortunately where we're going, but hopefully, those few sparks of rebelliousness or sparks of different thinking, even not, we are a herd of cattle and we all think the same. Do you know what I mean? Like, hopefully those sparks will stay alive, and stay going and go into the next, and that, like, art, writing, painting, whatever it is, whether you like it or whether you're not like it, it's there to shock you into a reaction. That is what it is for, and that is what it is based on. And without that reaction, you have nothing. So you know what I mean? You need to spark a certain reaction, good, bad, indifferent. It's about that reaction. And it's, about you going, I don't like that. Or I don't get that, or I've thought about that. That doesn't work for me. Fine, at least it's a reaction. We can't go into this sterile environment where nobody can react to anything and nobody can, because it's all the same, And it's boring. It's boring, and we're not evolving then. Simple, because I firmly believe that, like it or not, art, writing, music, the creative parts are there to bring some sort of reaction out of you. That's what it's there for. That's not, whether you like it, whether you don't, to think, I don't like that, or I don't, whatever it is, it's got to inspire something, a reaction. And if we're heading for the part where we don't react anymore, and we can't react anymore, and we can't say things anymore,
Yeah, it's a form of a protest, like art. If you think about it, it's you are just having your say, because you cannot let it go. So you need to jump and put it in as a writing, as a piece of music. But you need to have your say. You cannot just remain silent. So it's to a certain degree, I think, is a protest, and it doesn't need to be necessarily political. It can be a protest against the human condition, like against mortality. You think about it, like you are not happy with your limitations, and you want to express your anger about it. That's a whole. That's a very old theme. It can goes back to the Greeks, but we don't have time to go.
Oh,
to
it
go
could be a
in this one.
project. Could be a project to answering your messages the second you get them. That's where I start from. The hill of going to Zion.
Now, the action I'm going to give is not to you, it's to the viewers that are out there. And I would like them to do it as soon as possible before they forget. Is to press those three buttons below. Like, share, and subscribe. So if you guys stayed with us till the end, for me, it tells that we enjoy. So if you enjoy what we did, I'll be very grateful if you can press the like button below, subscribe if you haven't, and share with others, because I'm sure there are friends and relatives who are not watching us yet, and they will enjoy. We do this every month. We don't have a specific Tuesday, but we try to pick a Tuesday that is suitable for the three of us. So we'll be back in August with similar topics to what we discussed today. They're always about writing, but we use them as an avenue to get into other topics. Like today, we talk about cinema, free speech, and other history, mythology. So you never know where it brings, but we always try to learn between the three of us and make sure this is something that you guys can avail by listening to us. I want to thank you for the viewers to staying with us to the end. I want to thank two of you guys for another very insightful chat.
Thank you to you. It was cool.
And we'll see each other very soon. So have a good evening and talk soon, guys. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.